Given how much of the Pixar brand has been built around being the Makes Grown-Ups Cry 3D animation company and the Makes Grown-Up Adult Men Cry specifically, i.e. ow, right in the nostalgia, ow, my dad feels, ow, who's stomping right on my sense of mortality, it was perhaps inevitable we would finally arrive at the logical endpoint of Soul, wherein the studio that figured out how to make you form human empathetic bonds with toys, cars, robots, etc., effortlessly sketches within mere minutes a completely realized, utterly relatable, and emphatically human ordinary average Joe, literally named Joe, as a protagonist as you're likely to encounter this year, and immediately kills him to start the story.
Woohoo! I did it! I got the gig!
So, Soul, double meaning and all, is a Disney Pixar afterlife movie with a more secular vibe than Coco, but still built around a musician angle and themes of mentorship, at this time playing deliberately for an esoteric vibe and symbolism right the hell up front. Let's talk about big themes, mandate that screams, we're here to remind you that we're the subsidiary that does more than add action figures to the shop. Most of our main characters are just regular-ass people this time. The wacky cartoony stuff is still arty and minimalist. There aren't that many characters to begin with. It's a small story doing its own thing, and that's all. Said small story doing its own thing concerns Jamie Foxx as the previously mentioned Joe Gardner, a long-struggling New York jazz pianist and middle school music teacher who dies in a random tragic accident on the same day he is simultaneously offered the permanent security of the teaching job he doesn't love but would pay his bills, or a long-sought-after big break shot to join an actual touring jazz quartet. Refusing to accept his fate despite having found himself on the other side as a Casper-esque cartoon spirit, he forces his way out of line to the don't officially call it heaven portal and winds up in the Great Before, a kind of ethereal training ground wherein pre-existent human souls are invested with the elements of their personalities before leaping down to Earth to be born into human bodies, occasionally with the aid of mentors drawn from famous passers to the great beyond. Through a series of mutual hijinks, Joe forms an alliance with Soul number 22, a misbehaving Great Before resident who doesn't want to go down to Earth, and together they hatch a plan to scam the system so Joe can slip back down to his body while there's still time in 22's spot as a win-win for both of them. This is of some concern to the various theoretical construct beings in charge of managing the comings and goings of the afterlife, who keep watch over the unfolding adventure as Joe and 22 attempt to, well, a lot happens to them actually, much of it very funny, much of it also extremely moving, all of it extremely sharply realized and sophisticated in terms of writing and realization, even by the lofty standards set by Pixar, more so than almost anything they've ever done. Big sections of Soul really do feel like an otherwise straightforward light drama for adults that exists as an animated family movie mainly by virtue of plot circumstance. And while I don't think anyone who's passingly familiar with the Here Comes Mr. Jordan, Heaven Can Wait, Defending Your Life, etc. oddball subgenre of life-affirming heavenly bureaucracy comedies will be super surprised with where this is all going in terms of what Joe and 22 are meant to learn from this experience and each other, no prizes if you already suspected that Joe Gardner might have been letting his actual life pass him by, waiting for the life he thought he wanted, etc., etc., etc. But I don't think a lot of people are going to expect how honest and nuanced it's going to be about getting there, and I don't think anyone will guess fully how, which is why I have to be a little bit on the short and vague side here, because honestly, while there isn't necessarily some kind of massive plot twist to Soul, the fact is, despite all the advertising, they've really only been showing people mainly Act 1 of this movie, and as far as I know, zero indication as to the ingeniously staged scenario that ends up comprising the majority of Act 2 and the deeply dramatic turn taken by Act 3. And I feel like I'd be seriously depriving people by giving any of that away myself. And yet, what's frustrating about that is that the film is being advertised as it is, has inadvertently created something of a controversy, in terms of people being able to tell how early the living to dead switch happens in the story from the trailers and feeling, well, feelings at the prospect that in what was billed as the first Pixar movie centering a black main character and a story grounded in black American culture vis-a-vis Joe's dream of becoming a jazz musician, and the explicit connections subsequent plot details draw between the music genre, his New York community, his family, and black history itself, the main character's identity is effectively zapped into an ethnically indistinct cartoon vapor creature right off the bat, which outwardly would certainly be, and in fact is, a fairly valid concern to raise. And while as a white film critic, I certainly wouldn't presume to judge whether the manner that the film navigates this concern does or doesn't alleviate it, I also can't really get into what that navigation entails in the first place, since, like I said, I don't want to give away what turns out to be the hidden heart of this entire production. I suppose I can delicately suffice to say that the film has many more visions, some of them brilliantly subtle, of beyond, before, and ways of visualizing time, memory, and experience that have yet to be revealed by the marketing, and whatever one's ultimate view of how we come to follow Joe and 22 as main characters, the film's third character is undeniably the collective concept of the predominantly black New York neighborhood, community, and family that Joe left behind and is fighting to get back to. And just as we only needed mere minutes to establish Joe himself right off the start, characters like Felicia Rashad as his mother, Angela Bassett as a jazz legend whose quartet he wishes to join, Donnell Rawlings as a barber, are memorably realized and leap right off the screen just just where they need to. If there is a minor flaw to this one I can speak on, it's that I feel like the tail end of Act 3 gets a little busy, framed around a beat of conflict escalation that makes sense in terms of plot logic, drives a key point home, and helps with the build to as satisfying a climax as we're likely to get in the context of still delivering a family-friendly movie, but it still involves a bit too much invocation of earlier business that I'd previously been glad turned out to be mainly red herring stuff gesturing towards a theoretically less interesting version of the story, overly concerned with mechanics of its own universe. Still, it ends up being a minor issue, and one that I suspect will subside all but entirely on subsequent viewing. What's assured for now is that Soul is among the year's loveliest and most poignant and moving pieces of work, animated or otherwise, an extremely worthy follow-up to Inside Out from director Pete Docter. The score from Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor is itself beautiful, the animation is breathtakingly gorgeous, the vocal performances are eclectic and charming, an unexpected standout is Alice Braga delivering what may be the most authentically reassuring daycare teacher affect of any living human on Earth. And even if I saw the moral of the story coming from the start, I can't recall the last time that I saw it delivered this compellingly or with this much conviction. 9 out of 10, a low-key stunner, and exactly the movie 2020 asked for. Don't miss it.